Hello, class. Today, I would like to introduce you to your first reading assignment. And you can relax. There's no quiz, there's no test. This is just really to get you thinking about what writing can do. I really, at the top of the page, want you to think about things like the author's voice, vocabulary, dialogue, and the use of specific examples such as the names of objects, foods, specific moments, etc. So I want to go over just the first paragraph with you, and then I'm hoping that you'll read the rest of it on your own, because this week we're also going to be doing a little bit of writing about our own experience and our own families. And so I want to just kind of ease into it. And my purpose for this week is to just get us thinking about what it means to be a person on a page. So, good storytelling and good writing is kind of like alchemy. It's kind of magical. And when you do it right, you can allow your readers to feel like they're there with you in the moment and they can learn from you and just kind of feel what you're feeling. And this author does a really great job of that, in my opinion. The author is Korean American. His name is Chang-Rae Lee. And here's a picture of him. There he is. He teaches English at the moment at Stanford University. So he has written 6 novels, according to his bio here. And then also some personal writing, some essays where he talks about his own life and he tells us just what it was like to grow up in his world. So let's read just a little bit together. I'm going to read it out loud. And as I'm reading it, I just want you to try to visualize what he's talking about. And then I just want to come back and point out a couple things about it. So then when you finish reading, you can maybe be thinking about these things in more detail. Okay, magical dinners. So picture this. Thanksgiving, 1972. The Harbor House Apartments on Davenport Avenue, New Rochelle, New York. Red brick, low rise, shot through with blacks and Puerto Ricans, and then a smattering of us, immigrants. The rest mostly white people of modest means. Everyone deciding New York City is going to hell. Or at least that's the excuse. The apartments are cramped, hard used, but the rent is low. Around the rickety dining room table, the end of which nearly blocks the front door, sit my father, my baby sister, myself, and my uncle, who with my aunt has come earlier this fall to attend graduate school. They're sleeping on the pull-out in the living room. In the abutting closet-sized kitchen, my aunt is helping my mother, who is fretting over the turkey. Okay, so we're right here. Let me just back up. Look how doughy-faced the grown-ups still are. So young and slim, like they shouldn't yet be out in the world. My father and uncle wear the same brow-lined eyeglasses that have not yet gone out of fashion back in Seoul, the black plastic cap over the metal frames making them look perennially consternated, square. My mother and aunt, despite aprons stained with kimchi juice, look pretty in their colorful polyester blouses with the sleeves rolled up, and volleying back and forth between the women and the men is much excited chatter about relatives back home. We're the sole permanent immigrants of either clan, of the economy and politics in the old country and in our new one, none of which I'm paying any mind. My sister and I, ages 5 and 7, the only ones speaking English, are talking about the bird in the oven, our very first, and already bickering over what parts are best, what parts the other should favor. Our conception of it gleaned exclusively from television commercials and illustrations in magazines. We rarely eat poultry because my mother is nauseated by the odor of raw chicken. But early in the preparations, she brightly announces that this larger bird is different. It smells clean, even buttery, and I can already imagine how my father will slice into the grainy white flesh beneath the honeyed skin of the breast, this luscious sphere of meat that is being readied all around the apartment complex. So I'll stop reading there, but let's just back up and just pay attention to a couple things that this writer is doing to establish his personality and his voice so that we know he's not a robot and he's a real person. So one thing I first noticed when I read is his use of the phrase, "So picture this." So what that does for me as a reader, it makes me feel like he's casually talking to me like a friend, and he's inviting me to like just sit with him and imagine his life and his story. It's not formal English, it's casual English, and this gives the feeling of a real person. He also introduces right away the day and the year, Thanksgiving, 1972. So now I know where we are in time, and I know roughly that it's a holiday. I know, well, not roughly, I mean definitely that it's a holiday. I also know because he tells us that we're at the Harbor House Apartments. So he puts us like in a place and time, in a date, and he tells us that he's in New York, and he describes the building. So we know that it's a red brick low rise, and he uses some unusual verbs. So for example, he says shot through with blacks and Puerto Ricans. He doesn't say there are many blacks and Puerto Ricans. He says shot through. So that shows me also his personality and that he has a slightly different way of speaking. And it's also more colorful rather than just saying there are, which would be sort of weak construction. He also says words like a smattering of us, like we're splattered, we're smattered all around. So he's showing me that he's got a very specific way of talking. I might not say smattering, you might not say that, but this is the way that he speaks as a writer. He also uses the term, everyone deciding that New York City is going to hell. So that shows me again that he's a real person, that he's a little bit more casual, that he's also got a little bit of a sense of humor, that he's making fun of his own town. It's everybody here in this apartment building sounds like they're not rich. They're struggling working class people who are trying to make the best of their new lives. We can also see through the details that they don't have a lot of space and probably not a lot of money. He tells us the apartments are cramped. He also says hard used, so we can assume that that might mean like battered. Maybe it needs new paint. Maybe the floors are a little worn out. He also tells us that the dining room is rickety. So that shows me that maybe it's a used dining room table, that it's not new and sturdy and luxurious, but maybe it's something they picked up secondhand. Most importantly here, though, I think is not so much all the beautiful details, but the fact that this feels like a nostalgic piece. So he's remembering lovingly his relatives, and he's remembering what his life was like on this day as a young boy. And so he's imagining his relatives around this kitchen talking about Korea and what he calls the old country. And especially this line really gets me, where he says, "Look how doughy faced the grown-ups still are, so young and slim, like they shouldn't yet be out in the world." So this shows me that he's imagining his relatives in his head, almost like they're ghosts that have come back to be with him. And he says to us, "Look." So now he's directly addressing us, the audience. He's inviting us in to be there in that moment with him. He could have just said, "The grown-ups still look doughy face," or "they look doughy face. They're so young and slim." But he says, "Look how doughy face they are." It's almost like he's looking through a window of time, and he's asking us to look through that window of time with him. So I think that's another beautiful technique that he uses, and he's allowing himself to be sort of free with how he tells the story. He also remembers that they would be wearing these eyeglasses, like the heavy black eyeglasses that are not necessarily fashionable in America, but that are acceptable back in Korea. Kind of, suggesting that these are immigrants who look like immigrants and they're still adjusting to American life. Okay, and then in the rest of this, he starts to talk about his sister and how they're looking at this turkey that they've never had before. They're trying to act more like Americans and experience this American holiday. And we can find out as you keep reading whether or not they actually like the turkey or not, or if it turns out to be weird. But this is also really a piece about chasing after the American dream and as immigrants trying to figure out how they can fit in and be just, more comfortable in this new country. And so he describes the bird, the meat of the bird, as smelling buttery, and the slices of it, and how everyone in the apartment complex is doing the same thing. Okay, so just start to notice the details, the voice, the way that if you're reading slowly and you're reading carefully, you can really start to imagine smells and sounds and textures. That's a good writer. So as writers, we want to try to use all our senses, not just what we see, but what we hear, what we're touching, excuse me, what we're smelling, and what we're smelling. And the more we can use all our senses, the better as writers. Okay, so there are some additional pages, and he continues to talk about his child point of view. Remember that because he's 5 in this piece, he's seeing the world through a 5-year-old's eyes. So a lot of the details that he notices after this are a lot what a child would notice. So it's very beautiful. This is just one of my favorite essays. I love it so much. He's really like a magician, magical dinners, in how he conjures up reality using words. Okay, so please just think about these 4 questions or these 4 points that I make at the top. Just go through your mind and kind of work it out in your head. Try to describe those to yourself. And I think this will help you in the next assignment, which is to try out some writing on your own and see what you can do. All right, thanks for listening.